So morning, everyone. My name's Sean. This is Marta.
Hello.
Morning. Ooh, that's not a good spot to stand over. Okay, the lights.
It's too bright. Here, come stand over here.
So who got to go to the party last night?
We had one bull rider right here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How was that?
Supremely embarrassing.
So you did really well.
Did you get to ride the bull? No.
Did you get to see it at least? I didn't even get to see it.
But I didn't want that.
Been there, done that.
But fun was had. Awesome. So we do have a presentation we'll go through, but since the audience is very intimate, let's call it that. It's an intimate audience.
Yes.
One of the things I'll ask is actually, what is it you guys are looking for from this session? We'll start with you.
And share how long you've been using the community so we get a gauge of that.
I've been using the community since 2012.
Oh, okay.
And are you a tie? What's your pepper level on your badge?
I'm a daffodil.
Oh, okay.
You still? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
My glasses aren't strong enough.
I've been community for 6 months or so. I'm a green guy.
Who are you with? Oh, InfoSec, yes.
Yep.
I'm a Serrano. So we're getting there.
Yay.
And out of this session, I guess we can just want to know a little bit more about. Well, I'd love to know more about how to be more successful as a green guy, but I know maybe those two are interested in that.
They might tell you what not to do,
Yes. And it's the same.
which is, yes.
Yeah. And it's the same thing for IT pros or green guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap there. And for you, what is it you're hoping to get out of this?
Just find out more about the community, how to use it to my advantage, how to use it for local spice store.
Yeah.
All
We can
right.
go through all that stuff.
Yeah, we can definitely start. We'll run over a couple things just real quick then. And,
It's on if you want to use the pointer.
Oh, ooh,
Make
how
your life
fancy.
easier.
So one of the things, when we talked about this a little bit on the main stage, I also talked about it in my session yesterday, is what we called verified professional. And so, it's like all the other social networks. You get a fancy little check mark next to your name when you do it. But for us and for you, there's two main reasons we promote this. For us, it gives us some data points on you, which you're like, oh no, I don't want you to steal all our data. But we actually use that data to better benefit your session. So when we're working on personalization, we want to start making sure we know not just what's your title, what industry you're in, what are the things you're interested in. So that way we can start promoting the right content to you and not just everything. One of the challenges with the community is there's just so many discussion groups, there's so many topics happening all the time. It can be a bit of a water hose at the time.
Yeah.
And so this way we want to say, hey, if I happen to be a director, it's me, so. If I was a director of actually, something in IT, like director of IT, and maybe I was in a healthcare organization, I'm going to be more worried about something like HIPAA compliance versus some other topics. If I was a network engineer, I'd want to see more networking topics. Whereas right now, a lot of the site personalization is personalized for the group as a whole. We want to start getting to the point where we personalize it for you as an individual. And so this is one of our first steps in going there, is getting those data points about you. So the more we know about you, the more we can start doing those kinds of things. The upside is it also gives you 100 points. You get a fun little badge. It also gives some confidence in the community. So one of the challenges we have is our community is really, really big now. And back in the day, everyone sort of knew you were an IT pro because it was pretty much the only way you could find out about Spiceworks. Now you can go in Google and it's like, hey, I'm having a laptop issue. And even if it wasn't IT specific, we still have a lot of great answers from IT pros there. So we get home users wandering in, we get spammers wandering in. And while we try to nicely escort them to like Quora or Yahoo Answers, depending on the day, we want to make sure that this community is staying very tech focused. So this is a way when they say, hey, someone has this check mark, they also know, hey, you are actually who you say you are. You're not Sean's mom who just learned how to use an iPad and asking me how to reboot.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of more universities and college programs using Spiceworks as an educational tool, from teaching people how to become an IT professional as well. And so there may one day be like a verified student, so you would know, hey, this person's trying to learn to get an IT versus is actually a professional.
Yeah, and so that's our hope, is as long term we do evolve this to do different things like that. Because just like we have here, we have some of our IT pros, we have other some of our tech brands, we do have students. We actually have one of our users, Stargeeker, who's like one of our high-level members, And he's sort of been MIA for about 3 months. And I was like, hey, what's going on? He's actually started becoming a teacher, and he's been explaining, hey, I've actually been using the PowerShell group in Spiceworks to help some of my new students. And so, sort of to your point, we're starting to see a lot more of that. So any questions about Verified Pro?
I think the next one will
Sort of the
round that
job
out.
experience, yeah. And so we evolved this a little bit. So Verified Pro came out, last Thanksgiving. I remember that. It came out last Thanksgiving, and soon after that we started adding job experience. And so the difference between that is Verified Pro is really just like, hey, are you a tech professional? And if so, what are you? Now, that doesn't mean you're always going to be in the same job. I've been to different companies over the years. So job experience is more like what you'd think you'd see on LinkedIn or something like that. It's like, hey, where have I worked and where do I work now? And again, those data points don't just help us so we can start personalizing the site for you, but that again helps a lot of other individuals. So when you're engaged in the community, some of those times you're having not so much a break fix question, but more of a solution question. Your region, your industry, your job descriptions, things like that actually have a big impact on how those answers are going to be. An answer for something here in Texas is totally different than something in London, for example, especially when you're talking government. So things like this help give other members a reason to get a little bit more data on you and help answer those questions. That said, we know, some people don't like all their private data out there, so we do have a version here where you can say, hey, show this on my profile or don't show it. That data still comes to us. We can still start customizing the site, but if you don't want all your peers to know that, you can hide it that way.
Yeah, we start to get an understanding of your experience as well. Are you new into IT? Are you more experienced? Have you worked primarily in small businesses versus large? That sort of thing. And I've got an example here from one of our IT people of where they've shared their experience here, so you can kind of start to see the progression.
Especially in IT, because what you see a lot of people come in as like a help desk technician, and then later on they segment off into something else. Now I'm more into network engineering. Now I'm becoming more cybersecurity focused. So knowing when people are making those leaps, also we can start customizing the experience based off of that. But that said, knowing someone was a help desk technician, if there's a question about someone having a help desk issue, we know to still promote that to you, even though you might be looking down different avenues at that time. Any questions over that? All right, I'm going to actually pop to the community for this next one. Make sure where am I logged in and make sure I logged in as my normal user.
It's like it. Oh, wait, you're not on the screen, though.
Oh, that's right, because it's... If I minimize this, does it let me pop over there, or is it mirrored? No, it's mirrored. All right, give me a second. Let me escape. Try that again.
Glad you know how to do that.
Every year, I always forget to log out of my admin account, so all of a sudden you start seeing all admin features and
People
other
are like,
things
"Oh, I
you
want
shouldn't
that."
see. Yes, you're like, no, you can't see that.
Usually that's me, and Sean's like, no, you don't get access.
You don't want access. The more power you have, the more people want of you. Actually, Windows Server is a good one. So I know one of you said you were pretty new to the community, correct? So one of the things I'll point out here is you'll notice I'll use our search, but I don't hit enter. And so we have a quick filtering that a lot of our members actually use this to get around the community versus an actual search. So I know, like, for example, there's a Windows Server group. I can use that, and I'll just open another tab so I don't do this twice. But if I was even looking for users, like I know there's a guy named TFL, these are quick ways of getting there without going to the full search. So the full search sort of gives you each and everything, where this sort of segments based, hey, we're going to look off of discussion areas, we're going to look off of members, we're going to look off of review pages, and just that mostly exclusively. Windows Server I like to use because there's always lots of questions in here. So let's see. And so whenever someone starts a topic, they get to start it in different ways. Actually, one of the things we recently added is, I'm going to point this out even though I know it's ahead, is originally you can start a question, a discussion, or a poll. And recently we added a new version called recommendation, which we'll get into shortly. The reason I was coming to show that is when you're in the community here, you'll notice it'll say different things. Right now this says solved because this individual started as a question. If it was not answered yet, it would still say something like needs answer. So that way, as a member, you can go in here and go, hey, I know if this is still an open question, is it a discussion, things like that. The reason that a question is important is you're going to notice a widget over here. And these are, you see them across the internet, the up, down, thumbs. So as any conversation, you can always spice up. And spice up to us is like a like in every other community. We just like to make things have spice in it. So you can always like different things. You'll notice like Red Rum Rudy. Oh, that's a name in the morning.
Wrong one to pick out.
He has 3 spice ups, and you can always see who did that. But you can also see like, hey, someone found this helpful. And the reason we do this is right now as the OP, I can start a conversation, and I'm looking for a specific answer. So this guy has
Very
a
detailed question he has
so
there.
he does. I wish more people would actually ask questions like this. Usually we get the very much like, hey, my server's not working. You're like, give us a little bit more. And so the important part is, as that individual, he can come in and say, hey, Red Rum Rudy would have the best answer for me specifically. But many times you're going to see a lot of our experts in these conversations giving good information that will lead to that best answer, but isn't necessarily the best answer itself. And so we try and find ways of rewarding those individuals through like the helpful vote system. The other reason I like that is sometimes a best answer is particular to someone's individual situation, which may be very nuanced, and someone else may have a great answer in there for a broader conversation. And this way, as you start seeing those accumulate more helpful votes, it gives you a little bit more confidence. Like, hey, I know this guy's thing isn't going to work for me, but I see this thing has 500 upvotes. It's going to give me a better feel for it. So we add them there.
And then you add them on the profile, right?
Correct. And so like if we went to Red Rum Rudy's.
Let me open a new window. And I do know how to do that. It's here, right?
Yes. So if you ever go to anyone's activity and you're going to see, load, there's going to be a section called helpful votes on both sides. You'll notice they're in both places. And sort of gives you an idea of where this individual gets their helpful votes, what are the helpful votes they've had. Sort of like with best answers, you get a better idea of where their expertise is laying. And we do our best to reward that. You get points for it, you get badges for it, there's a tiered system, so the more helpful votes you get on a certain post, the better the badge system, things like that. We do it because, internet points are fun, but more so when I'm looking at someone's profile, I can start recognizing that they have some kind of expertise.
Now, what you can see in this post, this guy has the expertise.
Oh, Eminem. Oh, Eminem.
Don't try to say usernames.
So this individual, yes, he has expertise, which I think is that the next one we're talking about?
It's towards the end, but the helpful votes and the best answers and writing how-tos all kind of go into that.
So featured author is a new, actually first, any questions over helpful votes?
The helpful post, is that why you got rid of the helpful post?
So correct. And
Yeah.
so helpful post, so for those of you who don't know, back in the day we had best answers and helpful post. And helpful post, the difference was helpful post was awarded also by the OP. And so you could give one best
What is
answer.
an OP, Sean?
The original poster, the person who started the conversation. And so he or she could reward one best answer and up to two helpful posts. The challenge again became it was just that individual who controlled that, which was helpful, but many times, again, it's like, hey, this helped me. Actually, many times we'd get users who would not come back and reward those. And so we do have a moderation staff that goes through and cleans those up as much as possible. But many times we just wanted a better system so the community as a whole could start group sharing on finding what the best opinions were. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But I've noticed as a whole, they usually lean towards the right. And one of the ways we want to adjust the system long term is using the conversation we were just in, I think it was IT security. No, it was Windows Server. And if MNNX or whatever his name was had helpful voted something, since we saw him as an expert, we'd want to start giving more weight to that kind of helpful vote. So right now it's 1 for 1. If I gave a helpful vote, it's worth as much as an actual expert. And,
But it's all in order to feed the data science models that we've been talking a lot about this week. So if we only are getting feedback on quality of the poster from the original poster, you don't have the full picture whenever there's thousands of IT pros reading the discussion and it's helping them. We need to get their feedback. And so we evolved it and updated a little bit more to be like the current internet.
And it gives some validity to it. So like when I go to Amazon or other sites and I see a review has a lot of helpful upvotes. For me, all of a sudden, I go, oh, it didn't just help one individual. I know there's a lot of people who found some value in this, which speaks a little bit more than knowing just one person found value in it.
Yeah, and you'll see in some of the feature stuff we'll show over time, we can start to sort replies by helpfulness, or you guys can start to
Or filter out.
yeah.
And all types of fun stuff.
yeah, you can start to do some fun sorting.
Would you say we're getting that out? So the other thing we added pretty recently we call is the featured author badge, and it's sort of what it sounds like. So on the homepage, we have a team that sort of curates content in the community. Sometimes it's our content, sometimes it's users, like, oh, Daily Llama, he does the little spark here. And one of the challenges we came to find out is that as an individual, I'm going certain through the topics. Ooh, that's a great topic, and I'll throw it on the homepage. And this guy or gal's like later is like, why am I getting all these replies all of a sudden? What's going on? Oh no, did I misspell something? And they didn't know that we were actually putting stuff on the homepage until someone pointed out to them. And so as a way to let them know, we added what we call the featured author badge. And so the moment something goes live on the homepage, they now get a notification and badge saying, hey, your topic XYZ went up there. We also want to do it to just reward them. We're always looking for great content, and not all the content out there is great, shall we say. And so the more we're recognizing people who are doing it right, it gives a better example for others to follow. People who just put like, hey, the internet's down as their subject generally doesn't get, unless the actual internet is down, doesn't get that homepage. But those are like, hey, my network is having this issue, I'm using Cisco routers and blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, they'll notice something a little bit more detailed will get on the homepage. So it's rewarding those who we feel are sort of emulating what we want others to do as well.
And we do feature both IT pros as well as green guys. You can see Roger here from Know Before How to Post featured as well. So it's really curated based on quality. While we're here, though, I want to do a quick dive on just some of these things for the new people. Yeah. So this is what we call the start page. It's just community.spiceworks.com. This is the curated experience. If you go over to my feed, you'll see that's your personalized experience based on what you're following and what you're doing on the community. And so here, you went over the featured post, but here we call these action cards. These are things that the community will tell you need to do. If you've become a verified professional, it will go away and it will tell you something else to do. So that's a good place to kind of keep up with how you can interact and do things on Spiceworks. We've got the daily challenge, which is just one quick.
I'd say, who here is familiar with like Trivia Crack?
It was a couple years ago.
So it's sort of our version of that. It's a daily IT question to just sort of keep your brain working, a little lends us a little bit better idea of where you may be experienced or may not be. Or look how you set that up, or may not be, and boom, incorrect right there.
But hey, so we're only 49 people, so I'm amongst the majority. But you can go through here, and this user's a dummy user, so I won't have too much data here, but you can go through and see your streaks and leaderboards and so forth. So some of this stuff is locked because you have to do it so much to be able to contribute. But all of these questions are created and submitted by the community, and they go through a validation process by moderators to go in here. But that's kind of another fun area just to come in here and challenge and see where you rank on a daily basis. You can learn about what local Spice Corps you should be joining or when the next meeting is. You can see when the next webinar and live events are. You can see where your pepper levels are, where your points are, and what you're kind of building to next. And then if you need a service provider, you want to ask a question. So these are just kind of action things you can go through and do. And then this next kind of area is where you can help other people and answer unanswered questions. And as we collect more of that information about what areas of expertise you have, this is where it will start to get personalized for you to easily help people.
Yeah, because for example, if I logged into my actual account right now, you would see it start promoting Spiceworks support, because that's where my expertise happens to be. And so it's like, hey, here's this one in community support, here's this one in general support. So it lets me know who still needs some help, but it's just showing me places I have some expertise. Starts showing me stuff in PowerShell, I'm like, Hope he finds it.
So a lot of people, if they're new into the community, they'll use this as their homepage on their whenever they log into their browser or whatever, just to see what's kind of new. And as you start to get more involved and more active in the community, you'll switch over to the feed. And as you start following a lot more things, this is a much more personalized experience. It still has your daily challenge up here. It still has your featured content that's on the start page, but it will have additional things as you follow stuff. This one's not not personalized because we're not following stuff.
Maybe.
So that kind of gives you an idea of. We get that question a lot: is who should use the start page? Who should use the feed? I always recommend if you're new, use the start page until you become familiar.
Learning, yeah.
And you need a more personalized experience because it becomes overwhelming. Then you can kind of switch over to the feed.
And this was one of the things I actually covered, one of the first things I covered in my the onboarding session yesterday for new members. One of the things I always, and so I want to log into my account real quick also, to give you a better idea of what she's talking about.
As he's logging in, questions about that? Anything? Are you seeing new stuff, or is this all stuff you already knew? I gotta pause. Okay. Maybe we need to advance it.
So the only thing I'll show here real quick is not only can you collapse or expand, depending on what kind of user you are. For me, one of the things I always promote to members when they're new is look at what groups they're following. I follow a lot of groups because I manage the community. I sort of have to. But I usually recommend, especially when you're starting in the community, don't follow probably more than 15 to 20 groups. Find those that are most pertinent to you and sort of uncheck the others. The reason being is when you're first getting onboarded, it gives you big buckets. Hey, are you interested in networking? Are you interested in security? Are you interested in Windows Server? And we get a lot of people go, I'm interested in everything. And all of a sudden their feed is just like throwing everything at them, which is sort of why they start to default to the homepage. It's like, oh, well, this is manageable. The feed is insane. But if you go in there and actually manage your groups, it'll start cleaning that up, just showing the content that's most pertinent to you.
Yeah.
Sweet. You want me to get back on track? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. We can talk about anything.
We launched this, earlier this year, the
Yeah.
service provider. So we've actually had in the community a long time, there we go, for a long time, IT service providers or service provider pages. They're a little bit different from our brand pages. So as a vendor, you have a vendor page. We have another that's for IT pros, and this was more geared towards people who are very localized. It's usually 1 to, I want to say, 5-man shops who are just out there helping people locally. One of the challenges we had is it was not easy to find people in your locale for the specific things you were looking for.
Because there's, as you can see, there's over 50,000 of them, and all it is a list of the 50,000. So it's like, wait,
and you
that's
could
not
sort
very
by
useful.
name and by rating and a little bit by location, but it was not just as helpful as needed. So we launched this earlier this year where it says, you can see here, it's like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Here's some details about me. You can cover in the kind of technology you're already looking at or considering, a little bit more about their company, and then based off of that, you'll start getting filtered results.
Yeah, a couple things here to note on this experience is this up here is the business page. These down here are the users tied to it. And so if you click here, you'll see what projects the users have created, maybe what certifications they have, some of their job experience, some of the preferred projects. And then you'll see some of the reasons in the bullets on why you are matched. So if you would have selected some technology and they said that they have experience with that technology, it would show up there.
Yeah, because we also ask other things like, do you need someone on site? Do you need someone remote?
Yeah.
And then you'll notice off to the side here, what it'll do is it's listing all of those selected here as well as there. I think it's up to 10, correct?
Yeah.
10, we do self-select 3, but as the individual, you can unclick or click as many as you want to. And then you can just sort of send them all a mass PM saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. It'll start collecting some of that data, but you can edit that PM before you send it to customize it to whatever you really want it to say. And I think that's what this next one is. Yep. And so, for example, Jamie, who actually works for us, this is one of ours, sent this out, and we had an individual come back. It's like, hey, I'm able to help you in what way or another. The reason we like doing it this way is it also keeps the experience in Spiceworks. That way, you sort of control what data of yours they have. Sometimes giving them that email address gives them more than you're ready for when you're just doing a little cursory looking. If I'm sending out this to 10 individuals, I don't want 10 phone calls in the next 10 minutes. This way I can sort of control that, and then when I'm finding those service providers I really like, I can take that next step. Anything over that I missed?
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. The other thing we added pretty recently is what we call recommendations. And who here is familiar with Facebook?
Who's deleted Facebook?
Who's deleted? So Facebook, they added this, a year ago?
Yeah.
Over a year ago,
Maybe
where it's
last
like,
year.
hey, I'm looking for restaurants, I'm looking for whatever. So we saw that and thought, hey, what if we did that more for something that's very IT related? I'm looking for recommendations on, what kind of RAID configuration should I be running? What kind of server should I run for X, Y, or Z? If I'm looking at going from on-prem to a cloud-based email, which one should I go, and sort of giving my data points on that. And so right now, the difference isn't as huge as a regular question. There's a little bit of layout differences. It'll say recommendation instead of needs answer. But we found some interesting things just with making this change alone. We've noticed people more engaged in these topics.
Yes.
We're getting a lot more unique replies. And as we're seeing this more and more, we want to start iterating on this. And this is sort of where Marta was talking about the filters earlier. One of the great things we could do is a filter sort based off
Got that
of...
on the next one.
Oh, hey.
This is what it could look like.
Oh, there we go. Ooh.
Sean hasn't even seen this.
I know. Hey, what's this?
This is coming. Oh, look at the top. I put that up there for you.
Well, oh, that is a good one.
No, coming soon.
And so sort of as you're showing here, you can do different filters, you can do different sorts, and sort of customize the experience based off of someone's really looking for a recommendation versus a break-fix situation, which those conversations just happen a little bit differently.
Yeah, so some things we're looking at, and we'd love to hear feedback from you guys. I'm going to use this pointer so we're not just pointing up here, is, we've added this tag, needs recommendation versus has recommendation, or is trying to share something. You might have another tag of what technology category you're looking for a recommendation is in, and then we pulled in some insights over here. So these are products mentioned in the discussion down below. And then a rep to reach out to connect with. And you can see here, these are some insights that's showing reviews frequently mention good, support warranty, easy to install. It's popular among IT pros and larger companies, and it has a good sentiment, a positive sentiment in the community. And that, a lot of people are recommending this. And this is Spiceworks recommended. We also have this feature to collect, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It's a bookmarking system to organize content when you're researching technology. And then you can see, hey, here's the green guy. They're active. You can directly connect with them right here. And this brand's mentioned by 10 IT pros in the topics, so it's a pretty highly mentioned thing. And then the filtering down here, you see all replies. You can sort by IT pro versus green guy replies, and then you can even sort by most helpful. So these are some of the functionality we're looking to add next to this, and we'd love to hear from you guys on what else you'd like to see.
The one thing I'll also mention for you specifically is she shows Mike here. What I've noticed in a lot of conversations that as a brand rep gets more engaged in the community, more times IT pros are calling them into it. So like with Mike, I notice a lot of times when a UPS conversation comes up, people are like, oh, they'll start tagging Mike saying, hey, we should get Mike into this conversation. Mm-hmm. He's well known. He always gives good answers. He's actually, I don't want to say he's brand unbiased because he's obviously brand biased, but he also does his best. Like, hey, if this isn't the best solution for you, these are other recommendations I have for you, which IT pros find very helpful because if you're talking about your stuff, but also saying, hey, here are some other recommendations, that gives me a little bit more love and affection for you. It's like, hey, you're trying to help me, not just sell stuff to me. But yeah, this is one of those I'd love to see us iterate on sooner rather than later. Sooner. Speaking of collection, actually, any questions over any of this before we?
Come on.
You have in your searches where you do in the general search on Spiceworks, and it comes up with a bunch of stuff, and it already breaks it out into topics and gives you different pieces. You're all going to have places for this in a general search where it breaks it out.
For recommendations specifically?
This specific,
So to repeat the question for those watching over the video, I'm sure all two of you, is will you be able to search and find specific recommendation type topics? Yes, site search is a big pain point for a lot of people, and we have to figure that out.
Yeah. The interesting thing, though, so Umbar runs our growth team, and he did an experiment a couple months ago where he took our global search and sort of adding sort of what you're talking about, the different tabs up there. So it's like, hey, I'm looking for discussions, I'm looking for blogs, I'm looking for reviews. We've seen a lot more people engage with that and finding the content they're looking for quickly. So I think, as recommendations get more popular, maybe there is a recommendations tab, and it'll show you the currently active or the older ones. That would be really helpful for a lot of users.
Just having a one-stop shop through the general search.
Yeah.
Try and remember that this might be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions?
So if I, as a green guy, throw a comment at something like that, does that mean that, say, InfoSec would get listed up and then mentioned in this discussion, or would it have to be like an IT pro pulling us in?
It currently is regardless of whoever's engaged in the conversation. That said, if it was a home user and I found the home user, I'd remove their post, but
Yeah. But over here in this like insight area that we're calling it, that will be generated based on our AI models. So whatever one's the highest recommendation for the individual looking at the page. So like we were showing before, if we know that the person looking at the page is a small business and that product caters more specifically to small businesses, we'll show it there. So it's not one vendor or one product showing all the time. It would be dynamic. Yes. Yeah. So currently we're listing, I think, 3 at a time.
yeah.
Yeah. This is just for mock-up purposes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Any other questions on this? Awesome. And I think Marta actually just mentioned this one, collection. So sort of used to it. It's like our own bookmarking system. For us, who here is a gamer or played any games? There we go. Ever use Steam by chance? The curator lists? So this is sort of, we're riffing off of that. So it's not just a general bookmarking system. Right now it is. You can go in, if you find a piece of content, both on our site or off-site, but we'll talk about on our site first. You'll see a little collect button. I probably went past it too quickly. So for on like blogs and articles, you'll note on the sidebar. For topics, it's currently up in the top right by the Spice Up button.
Yeah, on the
but we're
previous page,
moving that.
You can see where it was
Yeah.
moved to.
Oh, yeah. And so we're moving it down to subscribe since we notice most people are using that for the action. And you generally don't know if you want to collect something till you've read it. So we take it from there, moving it down. And then as you get to that, you get a choice. You can build like a new collection. There's an existing collection. And it'll start showing up on your profile. So last year we actually announced this at Spice World, but it was more of an experiment. So it was all saved locally on your desktop, which was fun because sometimes you would kill your cookies and all of a sudden all your collections went away. So a couple months ago, we launched the back end of that. So now this persists across all your browsers, anywhere. So wherever you log in, you can now start accessing your collections. Right now, it was getting that back end, seeing how many people are finding value in that. We want to get to a point where it's easier to share. Maybe we have top 10 collection lists. Maybe there's even collections per category. So if I'm new to, I keep using PowerShell, so I'll use something else. New to Active Directory, maybe someone's made a collection for people new to Active Directory, and here are some conversations to know about. Here are some great how-tos. Here are some learn articles, things like that. And so that way people can start sharing them. I actually started using them a little bit for the green guys I engage with. Here are like 5 or 6 conversations I always want them to see. Sometimes it's about how to engage in the community. Sometimes it's about examples of how not to. But having that collection makes it a lot easier for me to find it because many times I have to deal with some green guys and unfortunately I have to remove their content. They're like, oh my God, why did you remove it? And then I'll show them examples of what happens when we don't. Because we generally remove things for the benefit of yourself as well as everyone else. If we had a green guy in there once who was bashing a user like really hard, and all it did was like a lot of brand control, shall we say? And so we removed it, and Nick sort of explained why. And his VP called the next day, and he was very happy about it. But at the moment, that guy was very upset. It's like, hey, this is my post. I pay for this access. Why did you remove it? And so we had a conversation from 5 years ago where we didn't and showed it to him. And it was a topic that got to like -100 and people saying, I'm never going to buy for this brand again. And da-da-da. It's like, this is what happens when we don't. He's like, thank you.
Well, beyond what happens, you also have community guidelines that
Correct.
users have to follow no matter if you're paying for the account or not. You can't be mean to somebody else.
Yes.
It's a professional place.
Which is fun because it is also a community of IT pros, so there's a little gray area there. It's like, where am I being snarky versus actually mean? which makes my job so much fun sometimes.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of users use collections to either collect content that they're trying to up-level a skill for, or planning projects. So if they're planning and researching products within security, they'll create a security products collection, and they'll collect those product review pages in there, and they'll start to keep track of content and those recommendation topics and so forth. So there's a couple different use cases we're seeing here, and that's why the sharing of the collection with other colleagues is going to be kind of next where we go with this.
Yeah. And the one thing I think I mentioned but we didn't show is you can also collect content from another site. So if I find something on Reddit that may be really helpful for something, I can also save that as a collection. So third-party URLs do work with it as well. Tagging, this is an update we actually did recently. We've had tagging in the community for a long time. The challenge we always had with tagging is, let me see if I can find that. Actually, I'm going to go to
I couldn't find it.
previews. The challenge we had with tagging is that as Spiceworks, we like to do things our own way. So instead of it's called like Spice Up. Instead of local IT meetups, we call them Spice Cores. With tagging, instead of using the @ symbol, we used a plus symbol. Oh, I keep forgetting that part.
Don't worry, that's why I'm up here.
Updates to tagging. So not much to see here. I just bring it up because it shows a little bit better what I'm talking about.
Well, that could be a good plug. If you guys want to keep up with the latest and greatest of the community, follow the Spiceworks previews group. Is that what it's called?
Correct. You'll notice when you're doing a search, it's previews and updates.
Yeah. That's where Sean and I post everything whenever it gets released to the community. Any new features, that's where it goes.
And in fact, when you saw the product plan that Jay had on the main stage yesterday, you'll notice there's a follow button. It is actually following this group. So we put all of our updates here, so that way people can always know about them. But we link that to the product plan because generally it's going to just be more detailed information here from what you're looking for on that product plan. So for us, we just sort of did what the rest of the internet did instead of trying to be a special snowflake, although we do keep our special snowflakeness as well. So when you're tagging, I use an @ symbol. In fact, I just do it now. Marta, and I start typing, it'll start auto-completing, and I can tag her to it. I could also say, I should also try some actual grammar, should check out the hashtag SpiceRex plush.
And that would be an example of a product or technology.
Yeah. So for individuals, it's an @ symbol. For the
You just post that?
I did, but I can also delete it. So it's my topic. I do what I want. But also, when things are tagged, you also get more details about them. So I can see, hey, this SpiceWorks Plush has 80 reviews, a little bit about it. I can see sort of the same data points about Marta. It's just really helpful for individuals to get a lot of quick information about whatever's tagged without having to go to someone's profile, without having to go to that review page, things like that. But also tagging works really well both for individuals as well as brands. So when I tagged Marta, she actually just got an email saying, hey, Sean's talking about you. And she's probably like, oh, again. Same thing works for vendors. So if I tag InfoSec to a conversation, anyone attached to your vendor page actually gets a notification saying, hey, someone mentioned you here, come check it out. Or if they tagged you individually, you get that same thing. We don't currently have that working with review pages, but that's where we want to start extending it to as well. So if someone mentions one of my products, I'd like to know about it. So having that system work there as well. Now let me delete my code.
And tagging technology when you guys are sharing recommendations or sharing opinions about that technology will, again, help feed those data science models that we're training currently. So the more tagging you do, the better it is.
Woohoo, this is my favorite. Marta announced this yesterday. So we showed this actually in an earlier post. So for a long time, who's here who said they were in the community since 2011? Was you, 2012? So I started in 2011. And the first thing I noticed was the peppers levels. And I was like, ooh, here are all my experts. And I find the Thai peppers, the dadles, the ghost chilies, which I finally reached, I'm happy about, things like that. And as I started reading conversations, I personally started knowing who the experts are. I know TFL is my PowerShell expert. I know Gary D. Williams is my server expert. I know my Rod IT is like my general support experts. But I know that just because I'm engaged in the community a lot of times. I'd go into conversations and I'd see someone who's a really high level person answering something, and it wasn't his area of expertise, but people were taking it as. They're like, oh, this guy is a ghost chili. He knows what he's talking about. And maybe it's all about Linux, and I know this guy is all Windows Server. Like, he knows nothing about Linux whatsoever. And they would start giving that weight because of the pepper levels. So we started trying to do is find a system that better promoted, instead of social engagement, more really about the expertise itself. And so that's where we started the status program. And so currently it's based off of a couple things. So whenever you're in a conversation, it's particular to that discussion group. So this, who is the in general networking expert? So here, that is probably some networking group, whether it's Wi-Fi, the actual networking group itself, things like that is only when your badge will show up if you have enough proficiency to show some kind of expertise. So Shmoo over here, if he was posting about the same thing but in the security group, his expertise labels would not show. Does this thing actually have a pointer?
Yeah.
How do you do
It's
that?
the yellow button.
The yellow button. Ooh, look at that, that's fancy.
Oh,
Whoops, that was
I
not fancy.
stepped on the cord.
Oh, it was you. Oh, perfect timing.
I'm assuming that's what it was.
Go there. So you'll see it.
There you go.
There we go. See that kind of there. You can also do sort of like, you see the pull down here, like Rod IT has a lot of expertise. I can't just say he's an expert in one or two. I got a lot of questions about this yesterday in the beginner session, actually. There was a lot of questions like, how does it come? What is it about? Things like that. So the things I always like to promote about it, because I have a super long post because I don't know how to say things quickly, that sort of dives into the details. But the big things to know is we use a windows of opportunity. Our expertise are based off of a discussion group, and so like there's a Windows server area, there's a Windows servers like Active Directory, things like that. And we know technology changes over time. Windows 3.11 is not like Windows 10, for example. And so someone who had expertise in Windows 10 years ago doesn't necessarily make them an expert today. So we currently use like a 2-year window saying, hey, we're looking at content within this time frame, and the closer you are, the more weighting it's giving it. The older it is, the less that weighting becomes, till ultimately becomes 0. Long term, what our hopes or our thoughts are, we'll say, because it may not get there, is getting very granular to the technology. So if someone tags Windows 3.11, you could always have a certain expertise to that if that's what you're answering.
To the technology,
to the
not
technology.
the technology area.
Correct. But the way it is now, we do that. We also weight things differently. So we look at best answers, we look at helpful votes, which we talked about. We also look at how-tos. But just because someone wrote a how-to doesn't make it right. So we do look for certain thresholds. How many people have voted it up? How many people have found it useful? Stuff like that. And then we take all those data points and give them different weights and sort of come up with an expertise score. We don't disclose it because sort of like with your, was the FICO score and everything else. We make things a little hidden behind the scenes so people don't try and game the system. We always tell them quality is going to beat quantity. So when you're in there trying to answer things, if your whole goal is to get an expert label, just help people out. Give them get best answers. Go in there as many details as you want. But for us, we do weight certain things. Like a best answer is always going to trump a helpful vote, for example.
Yes, a couple other things to add to that. Green guys can be experts as well.
Correct.
So this is truly based on the quality of your interactions. It's not weighted towards the type of users. And more data points will be added to the algorithm in the future as well. So as we look to get more granular down to the technology level, if you have experience with the technology based on writing projects that are, high quality projects where you've completed projects with that technology, maybe writing reviews, all of that sort of stuff will add into it. And we're looking, same thing with Daily Challenge, and we're looking for additional ways to validate your expertise.
What if you have certifications, for example?
Yes.
What if you've done some kind of, you were probably just about to say it.
Yeah. Some different assessments and so forth. So this program will continue to evolve to really show that level of experts, as well as we're looking at ways to evolve it based on showing your expertise level. So right now we're just showing the top experts. You might show, hey, this is a rising person that was a newbie, but they're really gaining an expertise, and so you'll start to see the different levels.
Yeah, and one of the things I also want to add, or we want to add soon, is add this data to your profile, so you can sort of see where your expertise is or where you may be becoming one. I have a couple users like, I don't have the expert label yet. How close am I? And I know because I can look at the back end and go, oh, you're this kind of score. But as an individual, knowing that might promote me to go answer a few more questions, go help a few more people. So things like, there we go.
How do I show this on the screen?
We just go back to this and hit escape.
So then this is just a view of each group page has the leaderboards on there, and you'll notice that every group has different number of experts. So this is not a finite leaderboard. We're not picking the top 10 experts in each group. It's truly, if there are only 2 experts in that area, then there will only be 2 people on this list.
And this is a good, you were really, give me a high five. This is a great one to use, actually. So you're starting to notice Rod IT, for example, he has 53 best answers, but Martin has 67. And, they have similar helpful votes, and he actually has a how-to, and people are sort of wondering, like, hey, shouldn't Martin be at the top? And again, this is sort of where that windows of opportunity comes in. Martin probably has a lot of those best answers that were almost 2 years ago, where a lot of Rod's content was actually within the last year. And so we give them different weightings because of that.
Yeah, and you can learn more at the link at the top that says learn more about how these are chosen.
And then it goes to my long post of craziness.
Questions about the status program or thoughts on what should be included next?
Is there a timeline in terms of, developing the expertise level?
So you'll notice I'm notorious for using the timeline of soon. I've worked with development for a very long time, and I've noticed anytime you give a date, something's going to happen. Every time you don't give a date, somehow almost always goes out on time. But the moment you give a date, something weird happens, and all of a sudden you have made a promise in blood, and the users will let you know how you have failed them.
Yeah, and we develop in an agile framework, so we're constantly iterating, so it's not like a framed roadmap as well, so things are coming in and out constantly. But check that previews group, and that's where it will be posted.
But that's a good point, because you'll even notice this with a lot of the features we've done. It's always like, hey, here's a first iteration, here's a second, here's a third iteration. So a lot of what we're doing is we're doing a first iteration out there, seeing if there's enough value there, and if so, bring it to that next stage. And if not, we look at yanking it out. The less code we have in there, the more the engineers can fine-tune the things that we really want and really need. And so for us, it becomes, hey, do enough people find value here? Okay, how can we make that a little bit better? Is it adding the new levels? Is it adding more certifications? Is it getting more granular with the technology? Iterate on that. People still find more use. Hey, now we start looking at the next piece and the next piece. And we pretty much do that with all of our features.
Yeah.
Speaking of...
So if you like something, interact with it.
Speaking
and
of which,
post in the topics on what you want to see next.
Correct. Yes, definitely. We love getting feedback in there, even if it's, I like to say, constructive criticism.
Yes.
Because sometimes we look at things so closely that we don't, I'm not a normal user, so seeing how an actual member would find value in something is really helpful. Speaking of new iterations, we have what we call Tech Insights.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about this in relation to the recommendations and over the last couple of days, but basically now using natural language processing, we're able to tell the difference between topics if it's about a technical troubleshooting discussion or if it's about someone looking for recommendations and researching technology to purchase. And so if it's about technical troubleshooting, then we help you guys get the answers faster with expertise and with fast answers, which is another AI-driven kind of functionality. But if it's about purchasing technology and looking for recommendations, we're able to let you know, hey, these are products that you should consider, and those will continue to get more personalized to the user over time. And then we provide you some insights about that. So the insights we're building currently are showing you what technology is most popular in amongst businesses, as well as trending up or down, peer sentiment. We're about to release words commonly mentioned with technologies to help you guys understand, hey, if it has great support, or hey, it's difficult to download, that sort of thing. And then looking to start integrating pricing through there, and some other things that you guys would like to hear. I was hearing some feedback yesterday where IT pros would like to hear about the value, not just, hey, what's the most popular, but hey, what's the most popular and affordable.
Yeah.
So looking to see how we can kind of do that. But essentially, these are to help you guys not have to read a bunch of review pages, a bunch of topic discussions to get all of these. It's aggregating all of that into one quick sentence here for you.
Well, before you go, one thing I want to point out real quick. And so you'll also notice right here, is it relevant or yes or no? Again, this is a new feature for us. The algorithm's very new. Our data science is working on this right now. So we always look for a lot of feedback. We know sometimes something might pop in here that shouldn't be in here, and getting that feedback from our members is really helping fine-tuning that. And again, it's whenever we're iterating on something, getting that data from all of you is just as important.
Yeah, so just how data science modeling works is it's only as good as the model is being trained. And so we need your guys' feedback to loop back to the models to say, yes, this is a recommendation, or no, this isn't. And that's how the models will be better. So everything we do here in the community is to facilitate a product that you guys own and control, and the community self-regulates it, which is exactly what we're doing with these recommendation models as well. So yeah, and then as we've mentioned the last couple of days, we've got an easy way for you guys to connect when ready with brand reps. You guys can ask any questions. They are great. We have one here who's wanting to learn more about this. I've had some of my other sessions as well. And then it happens all over private message, so you guys can stay in Spiceworks. And
because you get the option on this one, right? It's like
yes, you can ask them to contact you via phone or email, or stay with them private message. What would you guys like us to dig into? I think we have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Whether about anything we did or didn't talk about, as long as it's not about the application, because that's not one of my expertises.
I think it would be fun to have you talk about the application.
I could promise a whole bunch of stuff, and then you can go ask Francois, and he'll be like, what the hell is he talking about?
So from the product page, the vendor page, when you say talk to an expert on that last slide,
Yeah.
what does the back end of that look like? Who's getting contacted from the community? Is that, or from the, oh, perfect. So on this Juniper Networks, the directly chat with the product expert, when you click send message, who gets contacted from the vendor side? Is that just towards all the vendor representatives, like the same people who, when it gets mentioned, or?
So yes and no. So it's all controlled currently through the vendor page. So as a vendor page, I can have multiple contacts on there. And the review page by default looks at whoever that top contact is. So as a vendor, I can go manage saying, hey, I want you as my top contact, but you can be my secondary, my third. The review page is default to who that top contact is, but if you want to list someone else, so say I'm Microsoft, and I have so many products, there's not going to be one person who can answer Windows Server as well as Windows 11 as well as PowerShell. And so based off of who's on that review page, or the vendor page, they can say, hey, I want you on this product, but I'm going to add you as the expert for this product instead. But they all do currently have to exist on the review or the vendor page. That said, we are trying to build sort of with the control center to give the brands more control over that. So where it doesn't have to be someone who's on that vendor page, but someone they say, hey, no, this is who they say they are. We do want them as that top contact on that review page as well. That's a coming soon
So
feature.
the best way for them to update that would be to email
Email me, but you can say, basically when you go in the community, it'll say email partner support or email community. That will come to me and my team.
Yep. Good question.
Yeah.
What else? Yeah.
Actually, about the collections.
Yeah.
Is there any plans, or is there any already set up in place for like temporary ones where you don't have to go in and filter out and get rid of them again?
Questions about will collections have a functionality to be temporary? So what would be the purpose? Explain the use case of that.
Say I'm working on a project and I know I only have a deadline of like 60 days. And the best way to put this, because I've worked on a few projects that way where I've only had like 60 days, 90 days to work on it.
Yeah.
And then I have to be basically just slammed into another project.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to have to take the time to go through and just remove everything that I've collected for that.
So I guess
It's like a 90-day little
Yeah.
checkbox that says
Yeah.
erase in 90 days.
So I'll
It's not
say
to clutter it.
currently no. It'd be interesting to learn more about that. I guess my question to you would be, do you ever find yourself when you're done with a project trying to go back to some of what you did on that project? Because there's a similar project you've done. You're like, oh, what did I do here? Do you ever try and go back to? I do that all the time with different lists.
In most cases, no.
No? Okay.
It's just hand it off to someone else, or I have to drop it.
Okay. That might be an interesting one.
Yeah, for sure. There's also a project feature, which is kind of cool. So, yeah, if you want to pull up and demo that. So, as an IT pro on your profile, you can fill out your own projects, which will show you what that means. But they stay in an unpublished fashion, and they're just seen by you. Same thing with collections. Collections are only seen by you right now, not other people. But the projects, you can go to say, hey, I'm working on this project, and you put in your goals, what technology you're using, like what's the timeline, all the kind of details of it. And then once you get done with that project, you can actually publish it. And so other IT pros can see it. Whenever they're planning a project, they can get details on what you did. So it's kind of like showing your work experience in more details. We're going to show you an example here. And so this is kind of a cool way you could also use instead of just the collecting of the resources, where you can work your project and document it, but then publish it. And so it kind of builds a cool resume and experience for you as well.
Yeah, the original reason we built this was sort of giving you like a CV version. So it's not just, hey, here's holistically the things I've done. Here are actual projects I've worked on. Here's the budget I had. Here's the technology I used. Here's the time frame I had. Sometimes that's a little bit harder to put in a resume, but you can put links to things like this in there. But yeah, it's the same thing. A lot of that's also working draft form. We have a lot of members who start their project in the community, when they're actually starting their project, and keep writing it as they go and updating it, and then don't publish it until it's all the way done. Sometimes they publish early because they're trying to get feedback also, going, hey, these are the things I'm looking at doing. Here's what I've done so far. What do you think I should do as a next step?
Yeah, so combining the collections as a feature of this would be something, but then it would just be shown on your profile to yourself as unpublished instead of not.
Follow up to that. Say I had to throw it over to a coworker or my boss. Is there any way to just send a whole collection?
Currently, no, but that's sort of what we were talking about earlier. One of the iterations we do from now, we do want to do sort of like the curated list on Steam, where it's where you can start sharing those with individuals. Sometimes it's sharing just for viewing, but also sharing that, hey, help me keep this updated.
Yeah.
Also have permissions based off of that.
Or onboarding for your IT team if you want to say, hey, these are initial getting started resources for you to go read. You could share that out with new IT pros.
Yeah. For example, if you're using like our help desk or inventory, you also get the knowledge base system. You can use the collections with that as well. It's like, here are the knowledge base articles for someone who's starting as a new help desk technician. Here's the knowledge base articles for someone who's going to set up Active Directory access for someone.
Cool.
So I think we had time for one or two more questions? One more question.
If not, we'll be here.
Sweet.
Cool.
Well, that sounds like it's it. Well, I hope you guys got some value out of this. Like I said, if you are interested in learning more so we talked a lot about what we've done in the last 12 months. If you're interested in learning more on where we're going after this, we do have that 2:30 session. I forget what room it is.
Yeah, come ask Sean all the questions. Oh, wait, he's
Well,
moderating.
I'm moderating. I get to help facilitate the questions, not answer them. Although I'm talkative, I'll probably answer them too.
I was about to say. Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. And thanks for coming at 9:30, because I know 9:30 at the day after the party, not the easiest thing to do.